And now to talk about our module of the week, let's turn it over to Avi Schwab, a technical product consultant at ImageX and a maintainer of a number of Drupal. I feel like this should say something like a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules and camp organizing aficionado.
Well, since I started working on OpenY, if you'll note, I am the maintainer of many, many, many modules. Um, they're not technically my own, but I thought I'd leave it in there because I do have a lot of modules assigned to me now. Anyway, so this week, have you ever wanted to streamline the management of config changes during your Drupal project deployment? Importing individual configuration changes from contrib or custom modules and syncing settings across different environments. There's a module for that. That module is config importer and tools, also known as Confi, CONFI. So the config importer and tools module was created in April 2016 by Andriy Podnenko, also known as Podorok on Drupal.org. There's a 3.2.0 version that works with Drupal 9 and 10. And there are some D11 fixes in the queue that are waiting to be reviewed. So that should be out shortly. The module is actively maintained, although it's a developer module that's been mostly stable for a few years. So there haven't been too many major releases lately. It is covered by security coverage, and there are some unit tests. There's a video documenting the process on the module page, and there are also instructions on the module page for some basic documentation on how to use it. There are 8 open issues on the module, 3 of which are bugs against the current branch. There are about 300 sites using the module right now. The module has 7 maintainers across a number of different agencies in Ukraine. So, this module, as I said, it's there's no user interface. It's all of its work is done through its config import services. There are 2 services that it uses: an importer and also the param updater service. The importer service imports full configuration files, and the param updater service pulls in single parameters from a config file. Both of these services can be used in install files of contrib modules or in your own site to pull in configuration during database updates. This can be helpful for adding a new feature, modifying existing features, or pushing changes to many sites, perhaps through a distribution. There's also a spiritual successor to the Comfy module called Upgrade Tool, which has similar functionality with some extra features as well. And that is at drupal.org/project/upgrade_tool. So now let's talk about the config
So
importer. Sorry.
I have questions. I have so many questions. First one is, how does this differ from something like, well, how does this enhance, I guess is a better way to put this, the like core config management system? And how does something like this differ from what you can do with something like config split?
Sure. That is a great question. As I was going through the issues, there is a question in the issue queue that is, I think, exactly that. Um, the main use case for this module is for pulling in config from lowercase f features, if you will. Uh, not capital F features, but most of how what we do here when we're building modules for OpenY or other distributions, you can use these services to say, I'm updating a block in this module, or
Hmm.
I'm updating some piece of config in this contrib module. Um, I want that config to be specifically pulled into the site when I do database updates. So
So
it's not something that you would do if you were just running a single site, but it's more for managing lots of different
So,
contrib.
so it's basically a way to import partial configs based on the changes needed determined by the development team, as where like config sync is obviously like import export whole sets of config, and config split is more of like, hey, this config is going to be specific to this site, and put, split it out. Is that like a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's correct. So config sync is really like, you know, I update a view, export the config, and then I push that config to my project. Config importer is useful if, in the workflow that I'm generally using with it. I have a dev site that's totally separate from all of the other sites, but it's like the base kind of install of a distribution. Um, I change a view there. I export that config and dump it into a module that sort of acts like a capital F feature. Um, then I write a little hook in the install file that brings in that new config and imports it with config import, and then push that up to the contrib module. Now, any site that's using that contrib module, when they pull down the new version, they'll get that new configuration. It'll be updated when they run their database updates, and then they'll be able to config export that new configuration and push it up to their environments for that specific site.
Okay,
So
I see now. So, yeah, I actually have 2 questions myself that are related to that then. So, we could have used this so I have a client that has CSP headers across about, I don't know, 7 or 10 sites, and they all have to remain in sync, right? It's not really a distribution, and we used to struggle with that pretty significantly. Anytime a new service came out that was added to GTM, for example, we would have to, like, update 10 configs. And so we solved that recently by using recipes actually and using the config update action. But it sounds like this could have been an alternate solution where we could just have one site where we create the new CSP header configuration, export that to a module, and then use that module as a way to update it, export it, and push it up, right? Wh-
that's correct. I think the config update stuff, I'm not totally up to date on the I have not been updated. I have not updated my internal records on config update and, and recipes. Uh, but yeah, I mean, this has been around for obviously a long time. So this was a really good way of doing that distribution like stuff, um, without like storing all of your modules in a single distribution profile.
Okay. And my second question is, and it sounds like you may not have updated your internal register for this either, but does this handle like dependency pulling it? So like, can this help assist, for example, creating a recipe? So an example is I built a recipe for a client recently where I just created a recipe to create a ton of paragraphs that they had used in one project and they knew they'd want to reuse them in another. And
Mhm.
I forgot about form displays and manage displays. Does config importer provide a UI for, like, building out the dependencies that you wanna pull in, or is it literally
Bullet
uh,
one, this module has no UI.
good to know.
Yeah,
We're still
no,
missing one feature.
John's correct. You would have to either use something like features to kind of dump out all the related config there, um, or just usually the process that I do is I make a bunch of changes. In a kind of dev site that I have, and I'll just config export from there. And I've got that dev site in like just a Git repo that's not actually connected anywhere. So, I can see the changes that I've made, and then when you make those paragraphs, you can kind of see what changes have been exported recently and all the dependencies there. But yeah, this module doesn't provide any of that. You've got to figure out what the right workflow is to figure out all those
So
dependencies.
one last question from me. What is a spiritual successor?
It's a thing that does a similar thing that is not exactly the like direct upgrade path, but at some point down the line, somebody decided we should do it a slightly different way and created like a new thing that does a lot of the same things, but is a different thing.
Got it. Okay, cool. So
It's
basically
like a V2 with a new name.
basically you just got a twofer, folks. You got a module of the week twofer. Okay. Sounds
There
good.
you go.
All right. Thank you, Avi. So if folks wanted to suggest a module of the week.
I
Sorry.
mean,
Yeah, if folks want to
Yeah,
suggest a module of the week, they can reach out to Martin Anderson Klutz, Drupal Slack, at ManClue. I am his temporary replacement for the week.
perfect. Thank you so much.